I'm pleased to be joined by Dean Brown, the play-by-play voice of the Ottawa Senators on TSN 1200. And Dean, you're very lucky. You're the inaugural guest on my show. And let's just remember the one rule. I'm the star.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So by me being here, I've known you long enough. By me being here, I know for certainty that means that 3 people have canceled. That's how I know I'm here.
Including the general manager of the Senators. But hey,
there you go.
You're great to come on and pitch. Dean, 3 games in the books, a wild 8-7 victory for the Senators on Thanksgiving Day at the Canadian Tire Center. My early first impressions are they've got to be better defensively, and they can't be out with Linus Ullmarks long. What have you seen here in the first 3 games?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that what we've seen is early season hockey. There's been big swings. The game against Florida was a really solid win, emotional. Everybody in the building was all wired up. The game in Montreal was terrible. They couldn't connect the dots, couldn't, completely understand the flow game. They just didn't play very well at all. And then, in the game earlier this week, it was one of those situations where I don't know how you sit there and break down a 15-goal game for either team. The guys on the power play, I think they had a great night, and the guys in the penalty kill, I think they had a bad one. I think bottom line is that you're not going to see too many games like that where the goaltending just is not there, number one, and number two, defensively, they just gave up too much, as did their opponent. But I think what we've seen, Bruce, is pretty normal-ish. Yeah, well, pretty normal-ish early regular season hockey. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's sloppy, and sometimes you get a mix of the two. And that's generally the way if you look at the scores, there's teams that are losing 6-2 and then winning their next game 4-3. It's just, that's kind of early season hockey.
And we're not going to see many 8-7 games with this team.
Oh, no.
Look, one of the things they do have to do is, if they're going to make the playoffs, is be better defensively. And that's one area, I think that they have in the early part of the season, have shown spots of that, let's say. But to me, that's something that's got to happen here in the next stretch.
Yeah, and that's a must. It's a must because we all know, especially in this division, that you have to get a good start. You can't come from behind in this division. It's just too tight. It's going to be tight all season long, and that's just the way it's going to be. Probably for many years, actually, in this division. So you have to get that straightened out. But there's no question that this team has to have overall a better defensive game, and they have to have better goaltending. If you look at last year, and I think it was Gordy that did the numbers, when the team in the league, the median number for team save percentage was just below 900, just a smidge below 900. That was the team save percentage. Ottawa finished the year tied for last with Philadelphia. But if in the games that Ottawa played 900 or better as a team in save percentage, their winning percentage was such that they would have made the playoffs. So Ottawa defensively doesn't have to get to the point where they're a top 10 or a top 5 team to have a chance to make the playoffs. All they have to do is be middle of the pack. They just have to get to the median number in the league to have a real chance to be a playoff team if they play as well offensively as they did last year, which all signs point to, yes, that's going to happen. So, it's not as big a mountain to climb as some people might think, because as I said, they don't have to become one of the elite defensive teams in the league. They just have to get to middle of the pack, and they will have a legitimate chance at a playoff spot.
Well, and having a legitimate chance at a playoff spot, Dean, they have to rely on, Linus Ullmarks. And Linus Ullmarks was I don't know if you want to call him a late scratch with an injury on Monday, but we'll go that route. It seemed to me, though, Dean, that injury seemed to get worse throughout the course of the day. It started out as, we don't think he'll be out long. Then it was with Gord Wilson, he had some stiffness. Then by the end of the day, he had a strain and was being sent for more tests. We don't know at this point if he's going to play Thursday against the New Jersey Devils. judging by the fact that I don't think they sent Mads Sogaard back to Belleville this morning. There's two questions here. Number one is, let's start with Linus Ullmark. He's got to play a majority of the games. And we saw he's been good early.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's the plan. I think that, you're going to see him play, over 50, maybe 55 games, maybe a couple more, maybe 56, maybe 57. So, I think that's the expectation. With him, I think right now, I think we're all prone to conspiracy theories a little bit, but in this case, I think they're really being more than anything else being it's really precautionary. And obviously, because of his importance to this team, it's not something where they want to, toss a coin. They want to be absolutely sure. And a little bit of time now to make sure that's the way it is going to pay off down the road. So I'm not sure that his injury is any more serious than they think it is. They just want to be real sure, and they want to give it the time that it requires now, because you can't afford to do that later on if it starts, whatever it is, becoming a more less occasional and more present, that it's happening, whatever it is, that it's happening more and more often. So I'm not at the stage where I'm truly concerned about it, and I understand why they want to be cautious with him, because he's so important. But I think, like we said, yesterday's game, when you give up 7 goals, no one's happy. And the two goaltenders, both their save percentages were terrible. I don't think that that's going to happen on a regular basis. But suffice it to say, all of Ottawa's goaltending has to be better. The other side of the coin is, if you want to look at the glass half full, and it's hard to do when you're looking at Sogaard and Forsberg's save percentage from the last game. But if you're looking at a glass half full, everybody talked about the fact that you got to get, maybe 15, 16 wins out of your backup goaltender or tenders. And they got one yesterday.
Yeah.
It wasn't pretty, and wasn't pretty statistically, but you got one. So, that's one of the building blocks that you need to have. But you just can't bank on it coming that way very often. And you can't bank on having a lot of success with your backup goaltender or tenders when both of them struggle as badly yesterday as Forsberg and Sogaard did.
Well, and one of the things that strikes me as somewhat concerning is Anton Forsberg looked like he did last year, and that was not good. And the other thing that kind of strikes me is, how much progress has Mads Sogaard made? I mean, we're getting to the point here. Mads Sogaard's on a one-way contract next year. He's supposed to be the backup goaltender for this team next year, because they'll be paying Linus Ullmark $8.25 million, and they'll be taking Anton Forsberg off the books. This was not supposed to be an area of concern, but I would say what I saw yesterday was a little bit frightening.
Yeah, I understand that, but I think, too, Bruce, I would balance that by saying small sample size, one game where neither guy looked very good, and I don't think you can create an indictment over their entire season, which they haven't played yet, based on one bad day. But suffice it to say, you're not wrong that what they need and what they have to get out of Forsberg this year has to be better than they got last year. And you have to get more consistency out of Sogaard. And I think that's going to be, by and large, is going to be injury related. Like in the last 2 years, one of the issues with his progress has been the number of times he's been injured. No super serious injuries, but every year, like a series of them, which that always puts you back. It's kind of like the Boucher conversation. You see with him all the things that could be as an NHL player down the road.
Yeah.
But his progress has been so impeded by all of his injuries. I think that's a little bit of the case with Matt Sogaard as well, where he gets on a bit of a roll in the AHL and really starts to get into a groove, and then he gets a knee injury, not a big one, but a minor one, and he's out for 10 days. And it just, those little things kind of slow down the progress. So I would just be careful in making suppositions about the whole season based on one bad night in one game by the two of those guys. But overall, you're not wrong. Forsberg has to be better this year to be a consistent backup for Ullmark, number one. And number two, if Sogaard is going to be the number 2 goaltender in the NHL for this franchise next year, he has to have basically a solid season where you feel good about that before next season begins.
Well, I think one of the things you've learned over the lifetime that I've covered hockey with you is that, number one, I'm an expert on getting the lines every morning at the skate.
No, you're not. But anyway, go on, yeah.
But the other thing I do very well is I ride the roller coaster, okay? So right now, that performance yesterday my roller coaster was at the bottom. Before we wrap up here,
There's no question, Bruce. You are a startlingly good alarmist. That's not in question here. If someone's going to push the panic button, they're going to have to wrestle your hand off of it.
Don't get me after a game. I'm sideways. Look, one of the things I think I would say, though, is that, Dean, if I said to you after the first weekend of the season with a 3-day break in the sked here and the New Jersey Devils and the Tampa Bay Lightning coming up, if I said to you the Ottawa Senators would be 2-1-0, I think everybody'd be happy.
Yeah, for sure. And everybody looked at the schedule and they knew that it was going to be a tough start for Ottawa. When you open the season against the defending Stanley Cup champions, that's not an easy start to any season. And early season, and this is the irony here from the LA game yesterday. In your first week, you play the defending champs, and then in your first week, when it's so hard to get things glued together for all the teams in the first week, you're playing the team that last year was the third best defensive team in the league with the second best penalty kill in the league. And then, irony of all ironies, you have a game where LA can't stop anything, nor can Ottawa, but LA can't stop anything, and their penalty kill was terrible. Like two things that you could not. What I'm pointing out is that just highlights how wild, early season NHL hockey can be.
And it's like you say, it's difficult to take anything from that game. But one thing we will be able to judge here when we're back next week with the Bruce Garrioch show is whether the Senators are able to, how they match up against the New Jersey Devils and Tampa Bay Lightning. Because, Dean, and this is my last point, these are two teams that they're going to battle for playoff spots.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a lot of people who think Tampa, with the loss of Steven Stamkos and some other, changes over the last couple of years, are a team that might be moving out of the window, and New Jersey, a team moving into the window. They got a couple of wins. They're going to play before they play here in Ottawa on Thursday. But, they have gone through some injury issues. They're solid down the center, though, and now they have the kind of goaltending that they've been looking for a while. So there's no question. A lot of people look at New Jersey as a team that's going to take a playoff spot. The question is, who are they going to take a playoff spot from? But there's no question in this early going, there's not going to be any easy weeks for Ottawa, because no matter who it is, we've all discussed, this team, every team in the East, but especially in this division, has to get a good start. And this is not particularly easy, getting a good start against quality teams like this right off the bat.
Well, listen, one thing I know is we had a great first show because you joined us in a pinch, and I really appreciate it. And I'm sure Steve Staios appreciates it too.
I'm sure I didn't say any of the things that Steve would say. So there you go.
I got to tell you, every time they scored a goal yesterday, I thought, every time the Kings scored a goal yesterday, I thought I had less and less of hope of Steve Staios joining me today. Anyway, he is on the road, and he did have a good excuse. Dean, appreciate your time. I'm Bruce Garrioch of Post Media, and Dean Brown of TSN 1200. We'll see you next week.